All right, today we are looking at how we can create a work of art in the style of Keith Haring. So, a couple of things we want to think about are how are we going to use line and shape and color to create a design that looks like something Keith Haring would do, but that's something that represents us. How can we use symbolism, some type of symbol, something that represents us? And how can we incorporate those great gesture drawings that we've been learning about? So I'm using Chrome Canvas as I always do, and I'm going to pop on a couple of layers. And if you're using pencil and paper, you can just do sketches with your lightly with your pencil when you're doing your gesture sketches, and you can simply make them darker with your marker. If you have a black Sharpie marker or any type of marker for that matter, that's probably going to come in handy for today's lesson. So we're going to first lay out our gesture drawing, kind of capture what movements we might want to put in our little dancing character. If we're making a dancing character, you might want to think about Keith had those animals that he used that would sometimes dancing around or doing something exciting and fun looking. So think about what you could do that could create a gesture drawing. Remember, those gesture drawings are going to capture the quick moment or movement that a person might be involved in. So we are going to start, I'm going to start on my second layer here. Excuse me. And I'm just going to slowly kind of sketch in, like if I were dancing, what would I look like? And so I want to think about, remember we talked about sort of where would our shoulders be? And my shoulders are going to be tilted. And we think maybe what would our spine look like? And I think my spine is going to be kind of going something crazy like that. And maybe my hips are going this direction. And think about Keith. His characters had some wild and crazy movements. So I'm going to make my arms go like this, with maybe my hand coming over here, and this one's going to be coming up, and maybe I'm doing something crazy. I'm going to have this hand kind of come up that direction. So I've kind of found the bones, and I'm kind of finding where my gesture little bones are. We talked about finding where the hips are and how are we going to do with the legs. Well, one of my legs are going to come out this way and kind of come down, and the other one's going to go down this direction and come back under me. Now, I like that. That's a crazy looking dance figure for me. And I want to use some symbolism. And one of the symbols that I like to do is things I like to do that would symbolize me. I like to fish and I like to camp. So I think I might put a little tent in here. I'm just sketching in what I think a tent would look like in my little symbolism. Remember, a symbol is something small that represents a larger idea. We think about icons like on your desktop. You might click that little button and it represents something bigger. And so that's like a little symbol. You might be familiar with the peace symbol. You might be familiar with some of the symbols that we saw in our little demonstration or our lesson earlier this week. And so the tent is a little shape, a simple shape, and I'm using it's a geometric shape. Remember we've talked a little bit about geometric and organic shapes. It's a geometric shape where it's a man-made sort of shape. And the other thing that kind of represents me is fishing. I like to fish. And so I'm going to make a real simple sort of fish design. And this is just my sketch. I would put a fish there. And then the last thing I'm going to think about, and only because Keith Haring liked to use animals, and here's, I'm going to put my dog dancing here with me. So I'm going to think about his shoulders and his head. Now, he's got a big snout because he's a basset hound. And he's got these floppy ears. So I'm going to put his floppy ears going in different directions. And there's going to be his shoulders. And maybe his shoulders aren't that wide. Maybe that's too wide. Whoops. Maybe that's too wide. There we go. And maybe his back goes like this. And his hips come this direction. And he's got a leg coming down and dancing like this. And another leg coming down and dancing like that. And maybe this arm is going this way, and I know it's a paw. And this arm's going this way, and his paw's up here. And I think that's sort of my basic sketch. Those are my gesture drawings. This is how I'm using my gesture drawings. I'm creating those basic little movements. Now yours don't have to be complicated. They're really simple. I'm going to go to my second level though, and I'm going to, my third level, and I'm going to start taking my Sharpie, my little marker here. I don't want to make it too big. I want to turn it down a little bit. And I'm going to draw the outline of what my gesture drawing people might look like. And so I'm going to keep my head simple. Remember, whoop, that's a little too big still. Turn this down just a little bit. Remember, he kept his head simple and his body simple. So maybe my head looks like this. I got a pretty big head. And my shoulders and my arms come up. And then maybe this hand goes out like this. And this comes down. And then there's this leg that comes down. And there's that foot. And I'm going to erase this because I don't like this transition here. I'm going to make it a little more like this. There we go. I kind of like that. And then this comes up, and then there's that leg that does this crazy thing. Woo! And then let's not forget what this crazy arm's doing. I'm gonna have to make it do something a little different than I thought, because it's not gonna work out exactly like I planned, but I like it. So there's me dancing. And let me think about my tent here. I'm gonna put my tent shape in. And there's my fish shape. And now I'm ready to do my dog. And so my dog's gonna kind of be a shape like this. Let's not forget his crazy ears. They're huge. And maybe this arm comes like this. And I'm going to give him a paw because he's a dog. And there's his body coming like this. And there's that leg and there's that paw. And maybe his other leg comes down into this paw. Kind of goes like this. And there's his body. And there's his other paw. And now I've got a shape of my dog dancing with me. I like it all. Now, I'm going to go back and I am going to erase a little bit of, and I'm just going to do that by clicking my little eye off. That gets rid of my little sketch underneath. If you're drawing with a pencil, you can just do sketches lightly and erase those. And now you can see the outline. Now, there's a couple of things that we paid attention to when we looked at Keith Haring's work, where he used these little lines that showed the energy of the people he was creating. These little movement lines that show that there's some action going on. So I want to use some of those little lines to show that my guy, he is really active. And so is my dog. Look how active he is. I'm going to use those sort of action lines, those lines that show some cool movements going on, to really add some energy into my design. Think about that. All right. Now, the last thing I want to do, and I'm going to put a little post here so that reminds me that's a tent. And the last thing I want to do, I've looked at how we've used gesture drawing. I've considered how we have used shape, and how we are now going to use color. So I want to go to that layer below, that bottom layer, and I want to choose my, you know how I like to use actually I'm going to use, because Keith Haring, his colors are pretty solid. So I want to think he used those secondary and primary colors. I want to do the same thing. So I want to make my favorite color is blue. I'm going to make my guy blue. And so I'm going to come in here, and because I'm on that bottom layer, of course, we can kind of go outside the lines a little bit, and you don't even know, because the line is on top of what I'm coloring. So I'm making my guy blue. Might turn it up just a little bit so it goes a little quicker. And I'm thinking ahead about what color I want to make my dog. And I'm thinking if I keep my person and my dog and my little symbols that represent me there in the middle, I've thought about how we use symbolism there. If I keep those cool colors like blue and green and purple, well, then I could do my background in maybe one of those really warm colors like Keith used yellow or red was one of his favorites. Well, what if I did my background in red? This would really look like a cool Keith Haring design. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to think about how and make a plan, a color plan to how I'm going to use my color. So now I've got my guy, he's blue. I think I'm going to make my dog purple and keep that. And I'm going to go to my custom purple because I want my purple just a little more towards the blue range. And I like that purple. And I'm going to color my dog in purple. Look how much fun he's having. He's over here dancing away. You know what's funny is I'm pretty sure he dances like that. That's how he dances. He's a basset hound. Basset hounds dance particularly silly. Okay, so now I'm getting my purple going. I'm going to turn this up just a little bit bigger so I can move a little faster. Now, you all are probably using crayons or color pencils. If you have color pencils, boy, that's one of my favorites. But this is a good time to break out those markers if you've got markers because Keith's artwork was typically didn't have that texture that we might find that I like to use very often of that pastel or that crayon. No, his were more flat. He was a graphic artist, a graphic designer, and so many of the works he used these large areas of sort of flat and very consistent color that did not give us a lot of texture. And I want to think about how I'm going to use green now. I want to make my fish and my, my fish and my tint green. These are my symbols that represent me. And actually, I think I've changed my mind about the tint. I think instead of making it green, I'm going to make it yellow. And this will become a focal point. Because it's going to be brighter than everything else. And it's sort of near the center of my work of art. Now what I've got there. All right. And last but not least, I'm going to bring my red in here. I love this bright red. Oh, this is really going to look very Keith Haring when it's finished. You can see I've turned my size up pretty good because I'm working on my background, so I'm covering these very large areas, and I'm doing so very quickly. And if you've got, those broad tip markers or those fine tip markers, let's go back there. That's not what I meant to do, is it? If you got those fine tip markers, you might get in between those little areas, those detail areas. But when it comes to filling in your background, that's when, if you've got them, you break out those fat tip markers that I like so much. Those wedge tips that have those big flat areas where you can lay down lots of color really fast. Those are cool markers. I know a lot of you are using my very favorite color medium, which is crayons. And I know that because I see these get turned in and I'm blown away by the beautiful color ranges, or color assortments, I should say, and the arrangements of colors that you all come up with when you do your color mapping and selecting. Turn this down just a little bit so I can bring up my fine tip markers. And I'm just about done with my Keith Haring design. I look forward to seeing what yours looks like. How did you incorporate the symbolism? What kind of symbols represent you? Did you choose a book? Are you a reader? Did you choose maybe your favorite stuffed animal? Maybe you got a teddy bear that you think represents you. Boy, teddy bear would make a great design for Keith Haring. Maybe you're dancing with your teddy bear. Maybe you chose a bicycle or a sport equipment like a football or baseball or basketball. Maybe you're an athlete. Or maybe, and I know I see this a lot, some of you may have chosen a paintbrush, because I know I've got a lot of great artists in this class, and you guys are turning in some cool stuff, so it wouldn't surprise me if some of your all symbols were art related. I'm just about done putting my red in here, and as you can see over on my dancing guy, how much this really starts to look like one of Keith Haring's designs. It's those energy action marks, those lines that we created that show the movement in our gesture drawing. It's that simple outline that he created that shows the outline, the contour line. Remember we talked about contour lines in our lessons, those lines that follow the outside shape of an object. And so we're thinking about how all these things tie in together. The artist creates that gesture drawing. They use their contour drawings over to find the outlines of the figure, and then they create their shapes and add their color. And that's what you all have done today. All right. As I put my finishing touches up, I want to thank you for participating today. I look forward to seeing what color choices you made, what symbols you chose that represent you. How did you use line and gesture? What sort of things that Keith Haring used did you incorporate in the work that you created? Thank you all for participating. I look forward to seeing what you came up with.